What is going on? This is your boy Star King Gaming, and I'm here to talk about actually multiple things, a sponsor and a giveaway. First thing first is I want to announce that Spotify has agreed to sponsor Star King Gaming Presents. What does that mean? That means we're going to be doing a giveaway. So, how it works is simple. To be entered into the giveaways, all you have to do is one, download the app Spotify. It's super easy and it is free. Once the app is downloaded and you signed up, you don't have to pay for the premium. Premium is totally optional. I don't have premium myself, so I'm not going to tell you to get it. I have YouTube premium. I love YouTube more than I love Spotify. However, Spotify is willing to sponsor me, so I'm starting to like Spotify a little bit more. I might actually have to get premium by the end of this. Now, next thing you're going to do is go to the search bar, type in Star King Gaming Presents, and then click on it. Now that you clicked on what I just showed you, next thing you're going to do is it says follow. Click on the follow, and then it'll change it to following. Right next to the following is a bell. Click on the bell, and that will turn on all notifications. Now that you clicked on the bell, next thing I want you to do is go to the three dots on the far right there. And then a little bit down, it says rate this show. For every 5-star rating we get, I will do a special giveaway. Currently, we are at 30. And how it's going to be based is off of every 5-star rating, which we're at 30, will be $1 towards the giveaway. And if we hit 50, we will do two giveaways, one for 50 and one for 25. So remember that. So this is all going to depend on you guys. You guys can create up to multiple accounts. You create different emails, whatever. Just prove to me that you are listening by doing these following steps, and also comment on the podcast. You don't have to say anything. You just be like, "Hey, good job, thank you, YOLO." I don't even care. Put 6, 7 on there. Kids are saying that like crazy these days. I don't care. Put whatever you feel is needed on each episode, and it will help Spotify promote my podcast. The more reviews, the more push I get. The more listens I get, the more push I get as well. This is doing me a huge favor. So please do this, and you will be entered into the giveaway. I will explain everything later in the podcast. And every single podcast, I'll explain it. All right, guys. I love you. Thank you so much for doing this, and I will see you guys all in the podcast. Yeah, I know. An ad in a podcast. How original. Well, this is not an ad, just any ad, I should say. This is an ad that is both beneficial for me and it could be beneficial for you. There's a wonderful app called Kickoff that I've been using. I started my journey back in August of 2025 because I wanted to build my credit without having to get a credit card. So, what did I do? I went to Kickoff and I started the $5 a month program. Just $5 a month, I started. When I started this journey, my credit score was at 541. As I record this in June 14th of 2026, my credit score is at a 661. So I went up 120 points exactly. And all I've been doing is Kickoff, $5 a month. Now they have different programs that range from 5, 25, and $35, and they all do different things. The $20 plan is the one that most people recommend because it reports to all three credit bureaus and it builds your credit even further. The $35 plan is the best program because you get so many extra bonuses with it. I recommend if you just want to try it out, try the $5 plan. And as a special bonus, Kickoff will give you a $30 referral bonus if you click the link and you sign up and you're a new member. I will get $30 and you will get $30. So it's beneficial to both of us. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, why do I need my credit built? Do I really need my credit to be higher? That's your choice. Do you want to get the house of your dreams? Do you want to get the car of your dreams? Possibly even your career could be affected by your credit score. Some places require you to have a set credit score. So remember that. Thank you guys for listening. let's get back to the podcast. Okay, so this is all courtesy thanks to a guy named Go for a Beer. If you don't follow him, follow him. He actually does a lot of it's called Whatnot now. Me and him were having a little talk one day in one of his Whatnot videos. I guess you could call it little bids and stuff that you do. It's an auction thing. Go ahead and give him a follow on his gamer page, and you'll see. I'm sure he'll be posting stuff there. Anyway, I was telling him that I actually had wrestled somebody, and I'm gonna get to all this. Basically, what is going to happen in this podcast is I'm going to talk about my quote unquote wrestling career. I'm gonna lift the mic up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. It's a lot better. I didn't have like a long career by any means. Total probably about 6 years total, but I did have fun and I did enjoy it. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of drama. There was not a lot of drama. There was some drama. There was some heartbreak, and there was some amazing times with some amazing people. That some of the stories I cannot tell, and I will not tell. But I do have a few stories that I can tell, and this is pretty much just going to be a story time with Star King Gaming. Something unusual, something different. And it's going to be covering, like I said, my wrestling career, as I call it. Now, the reason why I don't like to talk a lot about my wrestling career was because it was in a time in which there was a lot that was going on in my life. A bad relationship. My grandpa passed away. Um, Lost one of my best friends at that time due to a shooting when he was in Seattle. And Tayshawn was one of the few people in my world that meant a lot to me. I don't talk a lot about him. Ironically, his name is Tayshawn Robert Moore, and I used to joke about him being my brother because we had the same last name. What's kind of funny is my brother's middle name is also Robert, so it kind of was a part of my life, and then that's kind of why I named my son Robert. It was actually because of my brother Larry, but Tayshawn was a part of it too because I was thinking about like how I can carry on his legacy because of passing away so young. He was 23 when he passed away, and it was that time frame. He wasn't a wrestler or anything. He had nothing to do with the wrestling part. He was just somebody I knew really well. He was actually killed outside of a 7-Eleven, and I don't think it was a 7-Eleven. I think it was just a convenience store. I always say 7-Eleven, but I don't think it was actually. I think it was just like a regular convenience store. Anyway, got my drink. Monster, thank you. They do not sponsor this podcast, but they are major help to my podcasting. Speaking of sponsors, Kickoff. There is going to be a special giveaway going on. If you join Kickoff, you will be entered into a personal giveaway, which you can earn some wonderful, wonderful things, including $100 Cash App giveaway. That's only if you sign up for Kickoff. And so listen to the video at the beginning again. It tells everything that you need to know about Kickoff, and you'll understand. I also am going to be talking about a giveaway. As of right now, I was going to start at June 1st, but because of some things happening, it's not going to post until June 14th. However, starting June 14th to September 1st, we're going to be doing a special giveaway for followers of the podcast. And all you have to do is simple. I show you everything. All you have to do is show me that you're following. You have to be a follower of the podcast to be entered. If you do not follow the podcast, I cannot get you entered. And you have to be following on Spotify. Come on, folks. I just noticed that this camera was extremely bright in my face. And I was wondering why. That's because I have it on the fullest bright, or the second fullest brightness. Anyway, back to the giveaway. All you have to do is prove that you're a follower. It's not really hard. It's really simple. You guys don't have to do a whole lot to get entered. I made it really easy for you guys because I wanted it to be a giveaway in which anybody could win. However, each podcast that I post, you prove that you're listening to, will get you an entry. So you can have a few entries. You get one entry just for proving that you're a follower. Then you get a second entry for proving that you are listening to a podcast. For each of the podcasts that you listen to, including the past ones, you'll get an entry. So you could have like 30 entries just being a follower. And how we do it is a process of elimination. You don't, your name gets picked, you get eliminated. No, it's not like that. Each time somebody's name gets picked, they will that entry is deleted. When we get down to the final three, those three people will be winning the giveaway. And how it will work is the last man standing wins the biggest giveaway. And it's all going to depend on you. It's all going to depend on you guys. Right now, as I record this, we have 35-star reviews on Spotify. For every 5-star review we have on Spotify, it will be $1 towards the giveaway. If we hit 100, we are going to do, not only are we going to do a $100 giveaway, we're going to do a $50 giveaway and a $25 giveaway. So that's why I said it could be up to 3 winners. Anything past that is going to kind of vary. Actually, going to depend on how well we do. But we do have a lot of Apple followers. I did notice that there actually are more Apple Podcast followers, than there are Spotify followers, which is totally fine. I appreciate the following and I appreciate the listens, but I'm trying to push Spotify as they are partnered with this podcast. So please remember to follow the Spotify. Now, let's get into this podcast. As I mentioned, this is all because of Gopher. Gopher Beer and I were talking, and I've been trying to help push him every way I can because he's such an amazing person. And that being said, that's why I'm doing this. Gopher is somebody I love like a brother. He's somebody that has always been one to try to push me. He's always tried to help me get what I need. There's something specific about him and I that I don't talk about. We have a very close bond that I can honestly say I don't have with a lot of people. He had a card that he was giving away or selling, and it was a Warren Moon card. And if you know me, Warren Moon is actually one of my all-time favorite players. I don't even know why. He never played on any of my favorite teams. And ironically, Warren Moon is the only African-American quarterback in the NFL Hall of Fame. Crazy. Only. He's also in the CFL Hall of Fame. But he sent me a Warren Moon card that is signed by him, and it's the highlight of my collection as far as sports memorabilia. The Stephen Baker 8x10 is up there. That is up there for sure. But I don't think it compares to the Warren Moon. I just don't think it compares. Eventually, I'm gonna have it posted behind me. I'm gonna put some Pokemon cards that I have that I love. A few other things. Actually, I got another card coming from him that's signed by a wrestler who I actually wrestled, and it has a different meaning to me for that reason. Now, I want to talk about my introduction into wrestling. I remember very well how I got introduced to wrestling. It was in the early 90s. It might have been like even 1990. I don't recall what year it was, but I remember my grandparents were watching an event called the Royal Rumble. And how I remember it was because there was just like all these people in the ring, and I was just like, what is this? And my grandpa goes, this is a Royal Rumble, a main event match. And, we're watching it, and I'm like, who are all these people? And there's these guys that are bigger than life. And I remember I was hooked. I'm probably was about 5 years old, so it's probably like 91, maybe 92 ish. I remember it very well. I remember I was sitting in the front room watching it. I was just like, wow, these guys are cool. These guys are huge. And I remember one particular wrestler I really liked as a kid was the Ultimate Warrior. He was actually my favorite wrestler as a kid. Then I watched a video that somebody introduced me to called the Self-Destruction of Ultimate Warrior. And I realized how much of a POS he was. He was one of the biggest pieces of shit out there. And the fact that he's in the WWE Hall of Fame speaks highly of Vince McMahon's willing to forgive. Um, and I think some of it had to do with Triple H and Linda, because I know Linda Warrior called mom. There was some things to it, and I'll explain some of that in a little bit. Let's get into the actual me part of it. But I remember as a kid, we on Saturday would watch it was called Saturday Night Main Event or something like that on for WCW. And I remember like some of these guys, and then we started watching a lot of events. And I remember some of these guys were just so cool. Hulk Hogan was big at that time. Psycho Sid, Shawn Michaels was starting to become a thing. Bret Hart was becoming a superstar, and there were so many guys that I got to watch. Owen Hart. Crazy to think all these guys that are no longer with us. I mentioned Owen Hart passed away. Hulk Hogan's passed away. Ultimate Warrior's passed away. It's crazy. A lot of these guys are gone from my childhood that I grew up idolizing. You know, and it's like The Undertaker probably was the scariest wrestler I had ever seen. I remember I was a little freaked out by him when I first seen him. But you know, you get to see these guys, and they're just larger than life. And I remember growing up, I got to witness such an amazing era called the Attitude Era. Stone Cold Steve Austin's. I mean, I remember Goldust was just this funny character to watch. I remember watching some of the antics that some of these guys were doing with DX and what have you. Some of the things that they were talking about, like, you know, suck it, getting in trouble in school for telling my teacher to suck it. Or if you ain't got two words, or I got two words for you, is, you know, saying that. Or if you ain't down with that, I got two words for you, or whatever. I remember getting in a lot of trouble as a kid because of that, but not really enough to get suspended or anything, but enough to get the teacher mad at me and threaten to suspend me. I remember watching some of these great matches, you know, seeing like Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels, the Iron Man match. That was so amazing. I remember watching that, and it went over the hour limit, and just an amazing match in itself. And I remember watching like The Rock when he was coming up versus Triple H for the Intercontinental title. Those matches, the latter match in particular, some of the best matches I had seen. And I remember like looking on it not too long ago. I say about 5, 10 years ago, somewhere in that time frame. I was just like, man, I was so blessed to see not only great singles matches, but some of the greater tag team wrestlers like the Harlem Heat, the Dudleys, the, you know, all in their prime, the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian. These guys had such an amazing wrestling careers, and it was so crazy to look at it now and see like where they are now. Edge and Christian being in AEW, the Hardys, they were in TNA. I haven't been watching too much TNA the last few weeks, so I honestly haven't been keeping up with them. But they've done amazing things. All of these guys are all Hall of Famers, no doubt about it. In every aspect of the words Hall of Fame, they are totally all Hall of Famers. They could be single Hall of Famers for some of them. You know, Jeff Hardy had some pretty great matches, and you know, Devon actually had a great run and as the what was your pastor. I love that. You know, when he had Batista as the guy collecting the money. It was like Deacon. I think it was Deacon Batista or something like that when he first came in. Anyway, you know, even Bubba had a great success in TNA, and some of these guys had amazing careers solo. And then Matt Hardy, of course, the you know, the delusional character he would become. You know, these guys were all amazing. Edge, Hall of Famer by himself. Christian, Hall of Famer by himself. You know, almost. You know, these guys all had amazing careers, and then they all had great tag team careers. So it's like you look at their accolades and you look at who they are. It's amazing to see. And then I got to see even more of the modern product. You know, the Roman Reigns, the Devon Evans, just everywhere. You know, I'm not. I shouldn't say I'm not a big fan of Javon Evans. It's just he's not the type of wrestler I like. I like Randy Orton. He's actually my favorite current active wrestler. Um, Sting was also one of my favorites. After I kind of started watching WCW more, because the reason I was able to watch WCW is at one point WCW would start at 8 o'clock, and WWE would start at 9 on the USA channel. TNT, I think, was or WCW was for Monday Night Nitro. But they would start at 8 o'clock every night, 8 o'clock. So I was able to watch WCW more than I was able to watch WWE or F at that time, WWF. But I remember as a kid, like there were so many gimmicks when I was a really young kid, and I remember like the Big Boss Man. He was a cop, or no, he was a correction officer, turned cop kind of deal. You had the Trash Man, that Duke. I forget what his last. It was like Duke Droznik or something like that. I can't really recall the name. The Goon, who was supposed to be a hockey player. They had all these gimmicks, and I remember like even the Undertaker technically was a gimmick. Think about it. He really was a gimmick, even though he lived that gimmick for so many years. He was a gimmick. But during school, I remember as a kid, wrestling was not something you talked about. Like, if you were a wrestling fan, you were a dork. You were made fun of. Not until the Attitude Era. And then I remember one day this guy comes to school. I'm not going to say his name, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. For all intents and purposes, I'm going to name him Buster. That's Buster. Buster's no longer with us. But I'm going to name him Buster. But Buster would come to school. He had this. He came to school one day. He had a Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt, and I was like, "Holy crap, you like wrestling?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh man, I love wrestling." Who's your favorite? I said, "Man, I love WCW. I love watching Sting. Man, he's my favorite wrestler right now." But Stone Cold Steve Austin, he's flipping off the boss and everything. Like that was so cool. Like we got to see something totally different. Like this whole attitude change. And I said, I will say this. I've always been a fan of Shawn Michaels, always in Triple H. I've always been a fan of their work, especially when they were DX. And then when Shawn left DX, due to retirement, and we got to see like X Pac, Billy Gunn. I was a huge fan of DX over NWO. Personally, I was a DX fan over NWO. But that's not to say NWO wasn't good. They were great. All 87 members of them, or however many it was. I think it was actually like in the 60s, actually, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 60s. It might have been 50. But either way, DX only feel like they only had like five. It depends on who you add. If you add Rick Rude, you add China, there's a little bit more. But, you could add Hornswoggle. Mike Tyson technically was a part of them. I think Hornswoggle was considered a mascot. I don't think he was actually considered a member. But anyway, I digress. But I remember like me and this guy Buster became friends instantly, and we would talk wrestling. And then he was like, "Dude, why don't you come over after school? I got an N64, man. We could play WWF No Mercy or WWF WrestleMania, one of the two. WWF WrestleMania 2000." I was like, "Oh yeah, dude, I'll bring my game. I got WCW and WO Revenge." He's like, "Oh, dude, that'd be cool." And ironically, I can't pick a favorite wrestling game, but it's one of those three. Like WCW NWO Revenge was up there. There was some classic moments that me and my brother had. I'll never forget this. My brother and I, we were playing, and we were a tag team. And I kid you not, I think he was Kevin Nash or I was Kevin Nash, and he accidentally hit me. And like I was like down and out outside the ring for like literally like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm not even exaggerating. It was like a glitch in the game. And like Kevin Nash was like dead. He was not moving for like 3 minutes. It felt like an hour, but it was like so much fun. We were playing as kids. But we definitely had a lot of great moments. Me and my brother playing that game. So much fun. But WWF No Mercy was also a lot of fun. I really remember playing that a lot. I remember playing the WrestleMania game too a lot. So those games all had different meaning for me for different reasons. The wrestlers in particular, like Sting was only in WW or WCW and WO Revenge. He was never in the WWF games. He would be in the WWE games later on. In fact, he was a cover of one of them. But anyway, uh, I was a huge Undertaker fan too. I liked the Undertaker. The gimmick was when I first was a kid, it was scary. Then when he came to the what was it called, the Ministry of Darkness, those stories were so good. As a kid, it was scary, but freaking you were interested. You were invested. And Brothers of Destruction with him and Kane, I grew to love these guys, and they were so much fun to watch. And then I started seeing some things that like I never thought, you would see on TV. Like some of the things that they were doing were just far fetched. And it was like, wow, this was amazing. And people used to make fun of some people for watching it, but then it became cool to like wrestling because of what Stone Cold Steve Austin did, because of all this stuff. And I remember like years later, probably about like 10 years ago, when I found out about just a little longer than that about the Montreal Screwjob, like a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. It was probably about 15 years ago now. It was right around the time Bret Hart came back to WWE. That's where I'm getting at, and I hear all these stories, and I'm just like, wow, this was like legit, like happened. And to this day, Scott Hall, or well, to this day he died. Scott Hall believed it was all work. And I get it because he's old school. A lot of old school people believe it's all a work. I remember um, in high school, or middle school, going into high school that summer, we created a group. We called ourselves the Vacaville Wrestling Society, VWS, or something like that. And it was a group of us. It was about 20 people total. And Buster was one that created it, along with a few other people, including a guy that um, his, his name is Tim, who I have not talked to him in about 25 years. But like, or 20 years, actually, more like 20 years. About 2004, so 22 years ish. Anyway, I haven't talked to him in that long of a time because it was like right before my senior year of high school. I stopped talking to a lot of these guys because I stopped doing it. But we decided we were going to create a wrestling group. Well, this was before like Facebook and all that, so we didn't have ways. Like the only way you call or talk to people was you had to call them. You didn't have cell phones. We had house phones. Letters were still a thing. You were still sending people letters. But I remember Buster came up to me and he said, I'm creating this group, man, if you want in." And I was like, what is it? What are you doing? Oh, it's just a wrestling group, brother, man. We're just going to talk wrestling, watch videos. I got a whole bunch of magazines, which he did. He had like a whole box full of magazines, like PWI magazine, I think it was, or something like that. He got to see like the top 100 wrestlers of '96, top 100 wrestlers of 2000, and it was like cool. Like you got to read a lot of formative stuff, like dirt sheets before the internet was what it is today in its infancy, I should say. The internet was nothing like it is today. Like you got on, it took like an hour, felt like, just to get on the internet, but there was nothing like there is today. Right now, if I go type in Stone Cold Steve Austin, there's going to be like stories. I can find out literally anything I want about Stone Cold. Back then, it wasn't that way. So I remember we were just all talking, and then one day we had like one of our weekly meetings that we always did, and we always just talked about wrestling. We all decided what we wanted to watch. I remember we watched like WrestleManias. We would watch King of the Ring. We'd watch, Over the Edge, which I believe was that the one that Owen Hart died at. I don't remember. I remember we watched a lot of them, and I remember he said to me, Buster did. He said, dude, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a backyard wrestling?" I was like, "Yeah, I guess." I mean, I was a little dangerous. I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of a pussy back then. Um, I was like, but I'm down. I'll referee. And so that's what we did. We created a wrestling program, and we were minors. And I remember back then, you could basically rent time um, on public access TV, and they had a time slot from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Saturday, or we could do Thursday from 1 a.m. to like 4 a.m. Thursday morning. We were like, well, let's do Saturday. Like, we didn't get like a lot of people watching, but we started to grow a little bit of an audience. And I remember we would promote like our events, and eventually it got to the point where we were actually having like actual wrestling events and stuff. And I was a referee, and then they kept talking to me, these guys, and like, dude, you should wrestle one time. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll do a little bit of training, and we'll wrestle. I remember the ropes were made of. I want to say it was like gardening hose, kind of. I want to say that's what we were using. The first mat we really ever used was just a bunch of pillows, or a bunch of he bought a whole bunch of mattresses from like yard sales and whatnot, and he just used those for a wrestling ring. And he bought we decided to start making a wrestling ring. He bought like these metal posts. Somehow he was able to get somebody that, cause I think his older brother did soldering for a living, was able to make like a whole big old like thing to where we could put we put, how did we do it? It was like a piece of plywood plus all the mattresses and whatnot, and then another piece of plywood on top of that, and then somehow he like was able to bolt it in, and on top of the plywood was about 30 sheets total of like just like blanket sheet, or from beddings, like like 30 sheets total that we stapled together and stapled onto the wood. That sounds safe, and it totally was. You know, OSHA approved. But I remember we were wrestling and we were having so much fun, and you know, junior year comes around, and I remember I was like, you know what, guys, pretty much done after this. Next year I won't be doing this because after senior year I'm probably gonna have to go to college or whatever. And we all did our thing. Um, so after the junior year, I only wrestled for about a year or two. And I wouldn't even call it wrestling. It was backyard wrestling. None of us were trained professionals. And Buster would end up pursuing it. Buster was a year older than me, a grade older than me. So he graduated a year before me. He graduated in 2004. So 2005, he was wrestling. He was a professional wrestler. He was on the road. I kind of lost contact with him. I moved on. I actually wasn't even living in the area at the time. And then I was actually doing some things. And then around mid 2006, he contacted me around, I'd say probably around either early May or late April. I got an email, and I was like, or I got yeah, it was an email. And I got on the computer, looked at my emails. I rarely did. And I had this email account. This was back when AOL was a thing. I had this email account from school. And I remember he said, he goes, hey, is this, I'm looking for Starking. I said, that's me. And he goes, my name wasn't Starking back then. And I'm just trying to keep kayfabe here. Anyway, he goes, I'm looking for Starking. And I said, that's me. And he goes, hey, man, this is Buster. I'm looking for you. And I was like, hey, how you doing, man? He goes, good, good. I got this event going on. Just realized this 20 years ago. Jesus Christ, I'm freaking old. And I said, what kind of event? He goes, it's just a wrestling event. I said, oh, okay, cool. Let's let's talk. I was like, like, we, what do you need from me? You want me to show up? I'll be there. I'll watch you wrestle. I haven't been to a wrestling match in a while. And then he goes, "Do you still like wrestling?" I was, oh, I love wrestling, brother. And I ain't gonna ever change. Um, Day goes by. He calls me back and he says, "Hey, so this Saturday I got this event in Sacramento." I was like, "All right, in San Francisco." Like, okay, I'll be there. That's good, man. He goes, "Can you be there at like 2 o'clock? The event doesn't start till 5, but you can meet some of the wrestlers and whatnot." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be there." I remember I took Bart. I got there. It was like 1 o'clock or 1:30, and I called him. I said, "Hey, man, I'm here," because I had a cell phone back then. He goes, "Yeah, dude, where are you?" I was like, "I'm at the front entryway." He goes, "No, no, dude, you got to go to the back." And I said, he goes, "There's a guy there. His name, I actually think his name was Stan." He goes, "You got to tell Stan that who you're with me, and he'll come get me, and then and whatnot. And I said, okay. So I walk all the way around to the back of this building. It felt like an hour walk. It really did. And sure enough, there was Stan. I said, hey, I'm with Buster. He told me to tell you to go get him and whatnot. And he goes, okay, I'll be right back. And there was another security guard there and a couple security guards there actually. Some people are driving in. There's, they're, oh, I'm with this, I'm this, I'm this. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, you're on the list. Boom. Well, Buster comes back out and he's standing there and he's like, yeah, man, you look the same as you did, you know, 2 years ago or whatever it was. He said, I try, man. I eat, pretty healthy. Anyway, he goes, come on, man, let's go. Go meet some of these wrestlers. So there's this group of people talking. There's this one guy who's like almost 7 foot. He's 6'8". Another guy who's like 6'4", but 300 pounds of all muscle. There's a couple of other guys that are standing there, and this girl. They're all talking and laughing, and Buster brings me up to them, and he says, "Hey, this is my friend Starking. Starking, this is Big Zeke. Big Zeke was a 6'8" guy. This is Aaron Williams. Aaron. Actually, he didn't introduce me as Aaron Williams, but his real name is Aaron Williams. He's 6'4", or was 6'4", 300 pounds. He's since passed away. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't remember the other guy's name. And then there was this girl there who I think her name was Brittany, but she went by a wrestling name, like a total like Scarlet Fever or something. She called herself or something weird like that, or something like that. But I remember she goes, "This is Brittany. She wrestles under the name this." And I was like, "Oh, cool. It's nice to meet you guys." And Big Zeke's real name was Xavier, and just wrestled under the name Big Zeke. I don't know what that was about. I really don't know how he got his name. He never found out. I wish I could find him too. I've been looking for him on Facebook, but can't find him. But anyway, Zeke, if you're out there, looking for you. No, I'm kidding. Remember that one time at IHOP that we had? Pretty fun. It was just me and you on a late night adventure. Back to the story. Uh, so all of a sudden, Buster goes, "Hey, I gotta go do something. Will you be all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be fine." A minute or so goes by, and all of a sudden, Buster comes up. He goes, "Hey, man, I want you to meet somebody. This is the promoter, Tony." And Tony comes up to me. He goes, "Hey, man, my name is Tony, such and such. I forget his last name." And he goes, "My father owns the company, but I run it for him. I'm the promoter. I'm the guy that sets up the venues and everything." I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you." He goes, "You can call me Junior. You can call me Tony. You can call me Tony Junior. I go by all. You can call me Mister Tony. I don't care." But yeah, everybody calls me either Tony or Junior for the most part, my friends included. And I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you, sir." And I said, "My name is Starking," and he goes, "Yes, I've heard a lot about you. You're very charismatic, I hear." I kind of look, and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you could say that," and because I am, I know I am. I didn't know that I was going there for an interview. I had no clue. And Cody goes, "Hey, would you mind having a little sit down with me? A little talk?" No, not at all. So we go into this area, and he opens up this door. Inside this room, it actually looked like the best way I could describe it was kind of like a doctor's office. It wasn't very big. Like a doctor's office room where you go to get a checkup and whatnot. Inside there was a desk. There was a couch actually, and a couple chairs set up, like one on one side of the table, and then on the desk, and then one on the other side. And inside on the desk was a laptop plus a bunch of papers and a couple notepads. And he on one of the notepads, it was like a blank piece of paper. He starts writing down some stuff. He goes, "So what's your first name?" And I tell him, "What's your last name?" Tell him. He goes, "I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions." He goes, "By all means, you don't have to, answer." I remember some of the questions. I don't remember all of them, but he did ask a bunch of questions. One of them was like, "Who is your all-time favorite wrestler?" Or "Who's your all-time favorite wrestlers?" What do you think of wrestling as an entirety? Is it something you always wanted to do? Is it something you know? And I'm like, wow, you know. There's a few other questions I don't recall. Like he would ask me like how my height, the weight, and I didn't know my weight back then because I never know looked into it. And me and him were talking, and he said, he goes, "Do me a favor, cut a promo." And I was like, "Okay." So I remember on the wall there was some kind of poster about I think it was McDonald's. It was either McDonald's or Burger King. It was one of the two, and I was like acting like I'm a heel and I'm hating on McDonald's and you know being in the city of San Francisco with all the scum and whatnot. I cut this nice promo that I just made up on the top of my head, and he was just like, "Wow." He writes down a bunch of stuff. He goes, "Give me a minute. I got to write down some notes." And he says, "What do you think about being a wrestler? Would it be something you're interested in?" I said, "Well, I've always wanted to be a wrestler." And he asked me what kind of experience I had. I said, "Well, I work at a warehouse right now, but as far as wrestling, none. Really, I did backyard wrestling for a couple of years, but I wouldn't call that experience." An hour goes by, you know, and he tells me, he goes, "Could you give me some time? I'm gonna make a couple phone calls and whatnot." About an hour goes by. At this point, it's about the show starts at 5. It's about 4 o'clock. Um, and he said, "Hey, James." Obviously, my real name's James. Come here, Mister Starking. And he goes, "I got a couple questions for you. Let's go back to the office." I said, "Okay." So we go back to the office. He goes, "If I was to set some things up for you to get trained, be something you're interested in. It's going to cost you some money. You'd have to figure that out, but I could get you into a wrestling school. The guy is actually at the end of the year will not be here. His lease is up at the end of the year. He's only here for a little while longer, and then he's going to go back to Florida. But I've already talked to him, and he said yes, he will train you up until the end of the year." Like I said, remember I said this like the end of April, maybe beginning of May. I can't remember. And I said, "Yeah, for sure." So I get to the venue. All right, I know we get I agreed to that. We get to the venue, watched the matches and everything. We had a great time. And Buster and I left together. We went out, had dinner that night, and we were talking. And he says, "I'm sorry, I blindsided you." He goes, I felt like if I didn't do that, you wouldn't have done it because sometimes you're a little scared." I was like, "Yeah, no, dude, I would have totally done it if you would have said something. But I mean, I would have dressed better, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, because I didn't know what was going on." Like I did have some nice clean Jordans on or something. I know I had some really nice shoes. That was my shoe game was always on point when I was, in my mid or my early 20s, late teen years. So a couple days go by, I get a phone call. I'm at work, like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden it's this guy calling. His name's Kenny. And he said, "Hey, I'm looking for Mr. Starking." I said, "That's me, sir." I said, "Well, how can I help you?" And he says, "Yeah, you talked to a guy named Tony or Junior or whatever you want to call him." And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Are you with the wrestling school?" He goes, "I am the wrestling school. Yeah, yeah. I'm the teacher." He goes, "My name's Kenny." Now, Kenny was a former WCW tag team wrestler. I believe his wrestling name was Kenny Chaos with a K, Koas. He had a school out in Oakland, California for a very short while. It was actually a gym that he was running. And then on the top floor, he created a wrestling school. He bought an old WCW ring, um, and was doing training up there. He had that gym for a couple of years actually, and this was like the last year that he was going to be there because he wanted to go back out to Florida. For the weather being so nice out there, actually, is the reason why he told me. That's he said that his back does not do well in California. I remember him telling me that. So he said, "I charge this amount. It's $100 a week. Generally speaking, that's what I charge. But Tony's a good friend. He's always sent me some good business. I've gotten a few people recognition, and they've given me a little bit of cut of their pay." Uh, he says, "So what I'm gonna do is $100 a month for you." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "What's your schedule like?" He goes, "I just need you 2 days a week." I said, "Well, I work Monday through Friday from at that time I was working 5 a.m. to about 3 p.m. Most days." Yeah, it was a crazy warehouse job. I was working over 40 hours a week. And he said, "Oof." He goes, well, usually I'm closed on Sunday, but I'll make an exception for you. I'll do Saturday and Sunday with you. You know, you be there this weekend. I said, yes, sir, I'll be there. So he sent me a text with the address. So I remember back then we had a MapQuest, so I had to look it up on there. Luckily, there was a BART station about 2 blocks away, so I just took BART. It was like so easy. Hopped on BART, got there. 8 o'clock in the morning. I was actually there at like 7:50. I remember the first time I showed up. And I walk in the gym, and it's a nice gym. It's not too big. It's not a very big gym at all. But I didn't see no like wrestling ring or anything. I didn't know there was 2 floors at that time. And I remember I was like, "What in the heck? Like, where's? Maybe it's in the back. I mean, but this building's not that big." And then I walk in, and the lady looks. She goes, "You look like you're lost." And I was like, "Well, I'm supposed to meet up with a guy named Kenny." She goes, "Oh yeah, Kenny owns this place. What's your name?" And I told her Star King, and she goes, "I don't have any record of you. Um, he should be here any minute. He comes in about 8 o'clock." And I said, "Yeah, that's when he told me to be here." So I said, "Can I sit here?" And there was like a little bench. She goes, "Oh, absolutely, please. Would you like something to drink or whatever?" And I was like, "No, thank you. I'm good. I got a water bottle." And sit down, and 10 minutes go by, or maybe like 20 minutes, because he was late that day. He was always late, actually. I get up. I get up, and it's must be Starking. I said, "Yes, sir." Takes my hand. My name's Kenny. He's a big dude. Jeez, man, I was not expecting you to be so big. He goes, "Yeah, I'm a wrestler," and he goes, "Supposed to I like to work out." He goes, "Let's go upstairs." Uh, he goes, "I'm gonna take care of all your paperwork." He goes, "There's a form I'm gonna grab right now." He goes over behind the desk, grabs this form, the clipboard, and hands it to me with a pen. He goes, "Go ahead and fill out all the information that you know. Um, if you don't know your medical uh, information, or your basically they wanted to know what doctor to take me if something happened, what hospital to take me to if something did happen." He goes, "You never know. It's just formality." And at the bottom of it, it says, "I am not responsible for anything that happens leading up to, including death and whatnot." And I was like, "Whoa." Because you never know when you're gonna die. Because you just never know. There's people that were practicing and collapsed, and it's just I always cover my butt. The first couple of weeks, I'll never forget. All he had me doing was running the ropes, and I remember I was so disappointed after like the second week of literally all I was doing was just running ropes. I didn't say nothing. I just kept doing it, and then finally, about the third week, he goes, "All right, I think you're ready. Your cardio's pretty good. Let's see how you can take a bump." And we started, practicing. He brought this guy in that was an independent wrestler that was pretty well known, I guess. I'd never heard of him. I really don't remember the name either. And a guy that he worked with in WCW that he knew really well, and I don't remember that guy's name either. But he told me that he was a jobber for the Stars, and he did mainly like dark matches and whatnot. And so these guys were working with me, and he said, "What would you like your finisher to be?" And I was like, "Man, I honestly I don't know." And I said, "I would like to do like a flying elbow." I just something about Macho Man when he hit that, I just loved it. So I did do it, and originally I called it the Red Eye. I already had a nickname given to me by Buster. It was called Big Red. He always called me Big Red, always because of my red hair. So that was always my wrestling name. And I remember we were talking, and then one of the guys that was there, he says, "You always want to do a finisher that you can hit on anybody, rather they're 7 foot, 500 pounds. You don't want to be trying to do like a jackhammer, which what Goldberg's finisher was, where you lift them up and whatnot when you're not that strong, because so diving elbow drop is actually not bad, but I would recommend something different too." And one of the guys said that his finisher maneuver was kind of like a diamond cutter, and he was showing me, and I was like, "Wow, I like that." And then so I started using it, and I remember like practicing using it. And I remember we were practicing this RKO type move, the diamond cutter kind of thing. And Randy Orton had a finisher called the RKO that he had just started doing not too long before that. In fact, I think the first ever RKO he hit was on was it Hurricane Helms or just Gregory Helms? One of the two, and he hit it on one of the same person. They just different gimmicks. I don't remember if he was Hurricane or just Gregory Helms. And I remember I'm pretty sure he was the first one to ever take an RKO. And I remember I was like, I kind of like the RKO version better than the Diamond Cutter because it kind of looks a little more vicious. And honestly, it kind of became my own thing, and I called it the Big Red, to go with my wrestling name. Big Red hits the Big Red. And the Big Red ended up becoming my finisher, but I was still using the Red Eye for the beginning parts, not very long, because I kept, like, I didn't like the landing. I was not a high flyer by any means. I mean, I did do a few dives and what have you, but I was not a high flyer. So we started doing this for about a month or so, and Kenny calls me out of the blue, like on a Wednesday. He says, "Hey, Starking, I talk to you, man." I was like, "What's going on?" I'm at home, by the way. It's like later, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. And he goes, "I'm sorry to bother you." He goes, "But I really been thinking, and I actually already talked to Tony." He goes, "I think you're ready." Now, this is more like at the end of August because it was just like right past my birthday. I remember my birthday had just passed. And he goes, "I think you're ready." My birthday's August 23rd. He goes, "I think you're ready." So it might have been even early September, but I'm pretty sure it was like the week after my birthday, like a few days after, I should say. He goes, "I think you're ready." Like, well, if you think I'm ready, then maybe I should talk to Tony. And he goes, "I already did." He goes, "I already talked to him. I think you're ready." So he's probably going to be giving you a call here pretty soon. Tony calls me. Said, "Hey, parking." Like literally, like the next day, Tony calls me. And I said, "What's up, man? How you doing?" And he goes, "Been talking to Kenny, and he seems to think you're ready. We have a big event coming up this month, this next month in September. It's like whatever day it was. It's like early on, like the 10th or whatever. It's at the San Jose Pavilion or something like that." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "I'd like you there. It's a battle royal, kind of like a Royal Rumble. We do the entryway thing. It's for the number one contendership for our title. But before you come in, we have to talk. So I need you here by 1 o'clock." I said, "Okay, I'll be there." So I get there at 12:30. Tony and I start talking and we're laughing, and then Buster shows up and he's there. Me and him are laughing and talking, and we're all having a great conversation. And then saying, I know, when he goes, "All right, I need to talk to you, Starking. Let's go." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So we go in this room. I kid you not. It was like not very big. It barely fit a little desk in there. And this desk is not very big. It's smaller than my computer desk. He had a laptop, a cell phone, and a couple pieces of paper and a notepad and folder. So he opens up the folder, and inside the folder, he has what looks like documents. He goes, "Okay, so I've already done the background check, because I did give him all my personal information. I should have told you that." He asked me for my social security number. They always do a background check. They want to make sure that they're not dealing with people that are convicted felons because of certain laws that they have to deal with. Believe it or not, there's a lot that goes into this. Like they have to have somebody inspect the building. They have to have someone there for like something to do with like regulations of the states and stuff because every state has different regulations. They wrestled in 5 states. No, see, they were in California. They did go to Mexico. I didn't go to that run. That's not a state. That's a country. California, Mexico, Oregon, Washington, Nevada. So 4 states. And I think they did a couple things in Idaho, but I don't recall for sure how much. And that's about as far as they went. I think they did do one match in Arizona, but that was like a one-off thing. And I don't. They might have done more after I left because I did leave, and they were still around for a couple of years. But we were known as Pacific Coast Wrestling Association, and we had ties with NWA. NWA was like a primary owner of the company, but we were our own company. It was weird how that worked. I don't know. Like maybe we were like partnered with NWA, but we were like considered like the West Coast, you know. So I remember I showed up and it had a bunch of people, and on this giant whiteboard, it had like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like all the names, and I saw my name at number 17, and Big Zeke uh circled, and he was like entry number 10 circled, and all of us was like shown like, and like next to our names was like 1, 4, and I was like, what's I was asking him what all that meant. He goes, oh, that's the number you're gonna get. And mine said 19. There was only 20 people, and so Big Zeke 20 with a circle, and he goes, Big Zeke's gonna win. You're gonna be the last one he eliminates. I said, oh, okay, that's cool. I was like, even though it's my first match ever, like in a actual professional wrestling scene, a couple things that he had to do was like, the contract. I remember this very well. The contract was you got paid $100 per performance, $200. It was either $100 or $200 per performance, and then you got paid 1% of the house, which is what all the ticket sales were. So let's say they did $100 in sales, you got $1 per $100. If they did 1,000, you got 10. So so forth. But we were doing really good sales. They started off like the cheap seats were $5, and up front was 20. But we were always sold out at every venue we did. Now, granted, some of the venues were like high schools, but the big events we were always pretty well close to sold out. Like the San Jose Pavilion or whatever it was called. I can't remember the name of it. It sounds familiar. We always did like 10,000 people, and I'm like blown away. Like there's so many people. I was expecting like 100 people, but no, he promoted it really well. I don't know why. I do know why. I don't know why they weren't so big. But I think a lot of it was because he didn't want to be mainstream, because he liked to do what he was doing. He made good money. He was able to retire at a really young age because of what he was doing. But he gave us. I'm pretty sure it was $200 was the minimum he offered. He goes, it's $200 per event you show up at, or per event that you're used. If you show up and we use you, you get $200. If you show up and we don't use you, I give you 50, as a courtesy. And I said, okay. And then he said, plus you get 1% of the house. When you start getting bigger, we do merchandise for you. You get one. You'll get a percentage of that. You'll get more than 1%. I said, okay. I was like, thank you. He goes, okay, so I need his signature. And I signed it, and he gave me a copy. And with his signature and my signature, I wish I would have still kept that copy. It had all the information on there, like how much I was going to make. It was like and I get to the back in the locker room, and Big C goes up to me, and he goes, hey, so you're the last one I'm eliminating, right? And I said, yes, sir. He goes, he goes, this is what I'm thinking we do. You're gonna eliminate your friend Buster last, and at that point, I'm gonna choke slam you, and you're gonna get up all groggy, and then I'm gonna hit you with my big boot over the top rope. I said, well, what do you need me to do? He goes, with the big boot, he goes, you're basically gonna have to fling yourself over because I'm not gonna hit you. He says, I'm gonna kind of help push you over, but I'm not gonna be hit. I said, okay. So the choke slam, what I recommend is you jump, because it makes it easier for me and it makes it look better. I said, okay. Because I can do the rest. I can hold you. You're not that heavy. I said, okay, cool. Thank you. And so I remember I was all excited, and then Buster goes, man, you're eliminating me? Your first ever match, you're going to beat me. But the reason was is because they were going to start a feud between me and Buster, because they wanted us to feud together. And I thought that was really smart because we already knew each other. So the chemistry was there. I thought it was the smartest thing ever. And it's to this day, I still think it was the smartest thing ever. Now, we get to the match, and I'm like, never taking a choke slam, by the way, for the record at that point. Get to the match, I go in there, Buster's laying up against the rope. I clothesline him over the top rope. I look over, and I flex on him. Like I did something. I'm like, yeah, like I'm flexing on him. And then that's when I walk back, and Big C's standing there, and I bump into him. Turn around, he chokeslams me. But when he chokeslammed me, you can't fake gravity. Couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. I had a hard time. I was like, oh God. I told the ref, I told him, I said, give me a second. I can't catch my breath. He was like, okay. So he kind of taunts the crowd. pointing like he's gonna throw me over. And I get up, I'm groggy, I'm up against the ropes, and then bam, he hits the big boot on me, and I jump over the top rope and onto the ground, and I sold it well. I sold it so well. And to be fair, he did knock the wind out of me, but I was fine. I really was fine. I'm all acting like I'm groggy afterwards, and the referee's there, and I bump into him. And I did this all on purpose. I didn't hit the referee hard, but I bumped into him, and I'm like, oh, and then the referee, puts my arm around his shoulder and walks me to the back. Well, we get to the back, I'm good. I'm fine, by the way. I'm just selling it. And the referee goes, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, selling, selling, selling. Whispered in his ear, yeah, I'm good. I'm selling, just like that. I kept telling him, I'm selling, I'm selling, I'm selling. He goes, all right, let's get you to the back. The other referee, there's another referee. So they're both walking me to the back. And when we get to the back and, they all walk away and I'm all good. And there's people clapping, like a bunch of people. And I'm like, oh, shoot. And I thought Big Zeke was right behind me. I'll start clapping with, like thinking like, oh, shoot, I don't want to be the only one not clapping. Come to find out they're clapping at me. They were all proud of me. Even Tony goes, man, was that really your first match? I said, yes, sir. You were phenomenal. And Buster goes, dude, that was good. Clothesline was perfect. Took that choke slam really well. And the big boot out of the ring. He goes, and the way you sold it, dude, you got this, man. You are made for this. And then me and Buster started our feud. At that point, they said, well, we got to do a backstage vignette, So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the locker room, and you're gonna all just be sitting there chilling. And he goes, we're gonna wait till everybody's towards the end. Then Buster comes in and he kicks open the door, and he goes, "Where's Big Red?" I'm like, "I'm right here, bitch. What are you gonna do? Like, why are you acting all tough?" And I start cutting a promo, and he starts cutting a promo, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting in the middle of the way. Then he throws a punch, and then it's just like everybody's just grabbing everybody, and he's like, "You're a piece of crap. You're a piece of crap." And he kept yelling that, and they took him out. And I was like, "Yeah, get that punk ass out of here," or whatever I said. I said something like that, or bitch ass, one of the two. And then while telling that, he hit me, and I'm just like, man, that little punk tried to hit me, like, I'm selling it really well, and I'll never forget, like, afterwards, Tony comes in and he goes, "Hey guys, thank you guys so much for an amazing show. You guys did amazing." And then he points to me and Big Zeke. Ironically, we were sitting right next to each other, and he goes, "Hey, I need to talk to you in the office." Now, remember, I told you this office that we had was not very big. Big Zeke is 6'8", 350 pounds. He's a big dude. Maybe 300. He might have been 300 pounds. He was a big dude. He was muscle, fat, all in one. I looked like he was built to be a defensive lineman, like a defensive tackle. I'm not kidding. He was big, and he's 6'8". There's not a lot of room in his office. Tony's a pretty big dude. He's like 6'2", 300, 200 plus pounds. He's a little heavy. And at that time I was really skinny, but I was still, there's still a lot of muscle there, or a little bit of muscle there. So, I'm 6 foot. And Tony hands me a check. It was the $200 plus 1%. I want to say it was like a little over $400 is what was the check. And then he pulls out his wallet, pulls out $500 bills, five $100 bills. And he goes, "This is for me. Because you did an amazing job. I'm very proud of you. That was awesome. I enjoyed it." He goes, "Please keep up the good work. Your promo skills are great. He goes, "You're going to be a star in my company for sure. And it's just a matter of time." Now, there was an opportunity. We had special guest appearance by a few of these wrestlers. I got to wrestle Road Warrior Animal. That was not fun at all. No way, shape, or form was that fun. He was probably the stiffest worker I ever worked with. And what that means is when he clotheslined you, he hit you. When he punched you, he hit you. There was you were bruised after that match. I wrestled him in a one-on-one match. He won with the power slam. I did a flying crossbody off the top rope. He caught me and slammed me. and won the match. And I was so glad it was over. And I remember I told Tony, I said, brother, man, I don't know if I could ever wrestle that guy again. I loved him as a kid, but boy, that was tough. And it might have been there. He was past his prime. For the record, he was up there in age. He should probably not have been wrestling, but because he needed the money and he was in town, it worked for him. Um, also had the opportunity to take a DDT from Jake the Snake Roberts, which was cool. But I didn't actually wrestle him. He didn't really wrestle. He just gave me the DDT. At the time, I was a heel, which is a bad guy. Um, that happened. That was pretty cool. So I got to wrestle a lot of. I got to be a part of a lot of things with wrestling. I never wrestled him, but we got Kane for a couple of matches, like two or three. But here's how it worked back then. Now times are different now. I know for a fact that they are because they have so much with the developmental, the NXT. They use other resources now that they didn't have back then. They didn't have the NXT that they have now. But back then, Vince McMahon would use a lot of local wrestlers, what they call enhancement talent. And what they would do is, like, let's say, for example, a debuting wrestler like the Great Khali. I'm using him as an example. They would put somebody in that was a local talent, not some big name. They don't want to put no big name in there. They would put a local talent in or a couple local talents, and they would beat him. They did that with Braun Strowman, and that's actually how James Ellsworth became a thing because he was a part of like some kind of thing. I remember like they had Braun Strowman versus like three guys that were all local enhancements. Vince McMahon loved to use local talents, and I found this out. I don't remember whose book it was. I want to say it was Eric Bischoff's. I could be wrong, but Vince loved to use what they call territorial wrestlers because it's how a lot of these young guys got their a lot of these wrestlers got their starts that he grew up to idolize, and he wanted to pay back for all these companies that helped him along the way. Some of these companies no longer around, but it was his way of paying back to pay back to help the future because people helped him along the way. He wanted to help others. Did it with ECW. He did it with some of these other companies, minus WCW because of the issues that they had. I don't remember whose book it was, but one of the books I read from a wrestler saying that it was his way to pay back, the wrestling community, so to speak. Now back to the story of how it worked back then. Is like, let's say for example they wanted some security guards. They would call, say, hey, we need about 8 guys. Do you have that? Yeah, we'll send them right away to you for Monday Night Raw. And they would send these guys. A lot of them, some of them were independent wrestlers. Some of them were just people that from smaller companies like Ring of Honor or whatever it may be. Like you've seen like Samoa Joe as a security guard, and that's what they would do. They would use you as a security guard. You'd be a security guard for the match. Boom, get you in. Boom, you're in. You're on TV. But what Vince would do is he would send wrestlers in return. Now a lot of times it would be wrestlers who maybe are coming back from injury. Like let's say for example, Kane had been hurt. In order to get the ring rust off, the only way you could do that is you have to wrestle. And it's true. Like if you're not wrestling, your body gets a little rusted. So a lot of these guys, they would go, or maybe they want to work on a new finisher for a wrestler. That was another thing that happened a couple times. They would send somebody down to work on a new finisher just to test it out on some local enhancements. So anytime they were on the West Coast, they would, specifically in the Bay Area, California, they would use us. So sometimes we had like the Big Show was with us a couple of times actually, and I actually had a couple conversations with him, and one of the nicest guys in the business, in my opinion. Sorry about the pause there. I had to sneeze. I did pause it for a second, but Big Show was one of the nicest guys I'd ever met in the business. One of I say for a reason. I never wrestled him. I never wrestled Kane, but Kane was there probably like 2, maybe 3 times. Big Show was there at least 2 times. I remember one of the matches we had. It was a battle royal, which Big Show won. I don't remember why we did it. I think it was just they were trying to get as much wrestlers in there, and I got eliminated by the Big Show, but I didn't actually wrestle him per se. There was a few other guys that they were sending out. Most of them weren't like the big names, though. For the most part, we got like like Chavo Guerrero was there a couple of times. That was pretty cool. I don't remember many other wrestlers though.
there was one guy that we had that wrestled with us a couple of times. His name was Trent Acid, and he wrestled. He was supposed to be there like 10 times, and he only showed up twice. I got to wrestle him once, so that was pretty cool. He was not reliable at all, but he was actually a really good wrestler. Probably the second best wrestler I ever been in the ring with. Um, Honestly, no offense to Buster, who was the third best. Um, he was really good. He was phenomenal. I mean, it was like so much fun to wrestle him, and we put on an hour-long Iron Man match. That was so much fun. Well, it was an hour. It was 30 minute, actually, 30-minute Iron Man match, and I ended up losing, but that was so much fun. But he was not reliable. He was heavy into drugs. In fact, he actually went on the road, or he went out to eat with us, and he was in the bathroom doing coke while I walked in and wanted to wash my hands, and he was in there doing lines of coke and shit. And I was like, oh damn, okay, well, he ain't gonna be around much longer. And I meant like not literally, like I meant like he's not gonna be in our company much longer. But I never said anything. He ended up passing away, I believe, in like 2009 or 2010. Remember, I heard about that after the fact. It was a couple years after. Somebody had told me. No, actually, I was still with. No, I was not with the company. Nope, I was not. Might have been. I don't remember. I'm gonna look it up real quick. Okay, he died in 2010, and I quit wrestling in 2010. But I quit wrestling in before he died. So I found out after I quit wrestling. Um, so Tony, I'll never forget this. To get to the story that I go for a beer wants to hear, and I know it went on a whole long story. This is where it gets really good. In 2007, um, doing well. I never was a champion, but I was in the top tierish. I was not the last match, but I was always a match before the main event. And Tony calls me, and on like a Monday, he says, "Hey, Star King, how you doing, man?" I was like, "I'm good." I go, "What's up, Tony?" He goes, "Man, you're gonna be wrestling a WWE legend Saturday night, so make sure you're on your best." I said, "Okay." And now I'm thinking again in my head, I'm like, "Oh, great, it's gonna be Road Warrior Animal this time again, or somebody like that." I was thinking it was gonna be one of those old timers that oh man, I can't wait for you to see who you're wrestling. I think it was going to be an old timer, a former WWE legend that's well past his prime, that's just trying to live his glory days and try to make a little money. But yeah, WWE's asked us to help get this guy back, get him ready for wrestling. I believe, and I could be wrong, that he was on tour with Fozzy, and Chris Jericho was set to make his return, and so I didn't know it was going to be Chris Jericho until later. Okay, so let me get to that story. So Saturday, I show up to the San Jose, the pavilion again, or whatever it was, and I'm sitting there and I'm just waiting. I'm gonna look this up. Okay, it was called the HP Pavilion. That's why I keep calling it the San Jose Pavilion. Couldn't remember back then. Now it's called the SAP Center. It's where the San Jose Sharks play. And so I remember I got the phone call and he said this Saturday we're gonna be there. Or this Saturday. So that Saturday, they they were promoting it, and it was a pretty well big event. And he said that you guys are gonna have a 30-minute match, so just be ready. I was ready, so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. I always got there early because how it would work is sometimes they would have autograph signings beforehand, and Tony would pick whoever he felt like picking. And a few times it was me. They would have these 8x10s of me, and I sign them for these kids. It'd be like a stack, and the kids would be happy because they got a wrestler's signature who they didn't even know. And I remember I got picked very. I got picked more like around this time than I did, my early and then later. Like in 2007, 2008, that was my prime years. But after that, I kind of went downhill. And but I was a champion at one point, so I did have some 8x10s with me with the champion that are probably out there somewhere. I have never seen one. I had never even. I should have kept them because he told me I could keep the extras that they didn't get rid of. They would do autograph signings beforehand. You got to meet the wrestlers, and This was before like cell phones were a thing, so like, or before they had the camera phones and whatnot. So it wasn't like that big of a thing. If they did, they were like very bad picture quality, I think. Anyway, I'm sitting there and all of a sudden walks in Chris Jericho, and I'm like, oh my god! And then I didn't put two and two together right away, and then I realized this is a WWE legend I'm wrestling. Okay, so he wasn't ribbing me. It's another word for joking or messing with me. And so I'm excited. I'm like, okay, cool. So then Chris Jericho was like the coolest thing I ever seen. Which everybody did. He walked around and shook everybody's hand and said hello to everybody. And I guess this was like a huge thing for wrestling etiquette. I didn't know this, but we all did it anyway. We all just did it. I just thought that's just something we did. We always said hello to everybody. If there was no seats empty and there was a veteran there, you gave your seat up for the veteran. I always did that. I always stood up. I didn't care. I didn't need to sit down. And I remember after he shook everybody's hand, he goes, "I'm looking for Big Red," and I said, "That's me." And he goes, "All right, come on, we got to have a little talk." And then so we get in this room, and it's a pretty decent sized room, bigger than the office that Tony had. It was the specialty locker room for him, and he's in there. He goes, he starts taking off his jacket, his shirt. He goes, "So I'm wrestling you tonight." He goes, "What's your finisher?" And I said, "I call it the Big Red. It's like a RKO." And he goes, "Okay, I can work with that." And he goes, "You're going over, kid." Um, and I said, "Wait, why?" He goes, "What do you mean why?" He goes, "You're gonna win." So what it means to go over is means I'm going to win the match. And I was like, "Why am I going over?" Like doesn't make sense. He goes, "Actually, it makes perfect sense." I said, "No, no, no. How? Like, tell me." Because like I'm confused. I'm like, I knew I was going to wrestle him. I didn't know it was going to go to this length. And he goes, "So let me tell you something, kid." And I'm like, "Okay. If I wrestle you," I said, "Okay, and I win, what do I gain?" Chris Jericho beats local talent. Okay, whoop de do. But if you win, you can say you beat Chris Jericho. How many people can say that? Nobody in this locker room. I tell you that. I never met any of these people. I was like, wow, he's right. He's not wrong. Now, Chris Jericho made a comment. He said that, you know, he was a little bit out of shape. So he goes, "I'm going to kind of like have to take a little bit easy on him and whatnot." And I said, "Okay." He says, "We'll call most of it out in the ring." He goes, "But, the reason why I asked you what your finisher is, because I was trying to think of a good finish." He goes, "When we go home, I'm going to just say, let's go home. And this is what the finish is going to be." He goes, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit you with my bulldog. You're going to flip over to your back. And I'm going to do the lion salt, but you're going to roll out the way. And I'm going to tell that my ribs are hurting. And then you're going to hit the Big Red. And 1, 2, 3, we go home." I said, "Okay, cool. I'm more than okay with this." So we get out there. We have literally my best match ever. To this day, I will say that is the best match I ever had. Um, it had everything in it. It had great, everything. And then towards the end, he goes, "All right, let's go home, kid." And hits me with the diving elbow, or the not diving elbow, the diving bulldog. And he goes to do his moonsault, the lion salt, or moonsault, whatever you want to call it. He misses, though, in his ribs. Then I hit him with the Big Red, 1, 2, 3, right in the middle of the ring. I win. And then he tells me as I'm laying on him, he goes, he goes, "Go to the top rope and celebrate." So, or go to the middle rope and celebrate, he says. Oh, so I was like, okay. I go up to the middle rope, I put my arm up, like, yeah, I won, and I'm talking to the crowd because I was still a heel. Then he grabs me off the top, off the rope, and I was not expecting this. I thought what he wanted was to roll out the ring or something. Like, I thought maybe he actually legitimately got hurt. So I was like, I did not expect this. So he pulls me off the middle rope and pulls me down. So it kind of I kind of jumped wrong. Luckily I landed right, but I'm standing there and he's looking me right in the face, and then he shakes my hand, or puts his hand out to shake my hand, and then he's like, you see him like whispering something. I wish I had the video. He's saying, he goes, "Wait a second," and shake my hand. He goes, "Dude, that was fucking amazing, wasn't it?" Because I bet your dick's so fucking hard. I'm in there. I'm trying not to laugh. And I put my hand out. I shake his hand, and then he gives me a hug and whispers in my ear. He goes, yeah, I bet your dick's hard. You just fucking won. Like, yeah, he was trying to make. I think he was trying to make me break character, like, because I'm supposed to be this badass heel, and I really think that's what it was. And then we get to the back, and he confirms that he was just trying to make me laugh and joke with me. And afterwards, he says goodbye to everybody, and then he goes, shakes my hand. He goes, "Hey, great job, kid. Seriously, thank you for a great match." And I said, "Oh, thank you, man. That was the best match I ever had." And he goes, "Yeah, I know." And he laughs and he smiles and he says, "But no, you're good, kid." He goes, "You got everything." And I said, "Thank you, sir." He goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "He goes, what are you doing after this?" And I said, "Probably gonna go home and eat and then go to bed, man." I said, "I'm broke. I can't afford to do much." He goes, "You want to hang out with me, man? Go to a bar or something, a couple drinks?" And I said, "I can't afford that." He looks at me, and goes, "I'm Chris fucking Jericho. I didn't ask if you had money." And I was like, "Oh, okay, bad, my bad." He goes, "You want to go out with drinks with Chris fucking Jericho?" And he smiles at me. I said, "Yes, sir. I would love to. Thank you." So we get in this cab and we go to this bar that's not too far away. And the first bar we went to, it was Pride Night there. For whatever reason, they were having a gay pride thing. We ended up having a drink and had a pretty good time there. But he goes, "I want to go to a different bar, though." He goes, "I felt bad when we walked in and there's a bunch of guys and girls that are kissing each other that are, definitely gay and whatnot." He goes, "I just felt bad, so I didn't want to, like, seem like I was homophobic or anything." Because he goes, "I'm actually not." He goes, "It's just not my place I want to be." So we go there and there's people talking and shaking hands. And he goes, "All right, let's go to the next bar." So we go to the next bar and it's a sports bar. It's a nice one. Now, this is what I'm talking about. They had like hockey or whatever. I don't even remember on the screen. I really don't recall. I think it was actually basketball. We were talking and I was asking him questions all night. And I remember one of the questions I asked was like, "What's the key to being a successful wrestler?" Is, man, he goes, "What you have, you could be one." He goes, "Really, you got great charisma. That is something you cannot be taught. Wrestling can be taught. We can work with that. What your skill level is," he goes, "I'm going to say this. Your skill level as a wrestler is probably a solid 6, maybe 7." He goes, "But with your charisma, you're easy a 10." He goes, "The way you can sell, the way you can work the crowd, you're a solid 10 at that." And he goes, "Your wrestling skills, I would say, are a 6 or 7." 6, 7, huh? Anyway, but he goes, "You got it. You're going to be a superstar." I said, "Wow, thank you, sir." He goes, "Yeah, he could be a superstar, but I'm going to give you the best advice I give everybody. Do not." He goes, "Do you have a wife? Do you have are you married?" I said, "No, sir. Not at this time. I'm not even in a relationship." He goes, "Don't." I said, "What do you mean, don't?" He goes, "Don't. Trust me. I'm married and all this, and it's like, it's great, but I'm gone more than I'm at home. I miss birth of my kids. I miss events. I miss this. I miss that." He started going on this whole, like, tangent about all these things that are going on. And I remember I was like, wow, I don't want that. Like, I want to be there with my wife. I want my wife there. Like, I want to have kids and have my kids there and, watch them grow. I was just like, wow. It really, like, put everything in perspective for me. It really did. And then he goes, "Hey, you want to go to a strip club?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's go." And I was thinking about it, like, this guy's married, and nonetheless, he is very happily married. And here we are, we're at a strip club. Then afterwards, we go to the bar for one more drink. It was like 1 o'clock. He goes, let's go before last call." So we get there, um, take one more shot. Uh, he pays for my cab to take me home. And remember, I thanked him and I said, "Man, that was one of the best nights of my life, man. I really appreciate it." He goes, "Hey, man, no problem. Can't wait to see you in WWE." I was like, "Thank you. That means a lot." And that was cool. That was the greatest moment of my wrestling career. And then a couple weeks go by. This girl comes in. I'm gonna say her name. Her name's Cindy. And my friend Buster, who, remember, that's not his real name, tells me, he's like, "Man, look at her." So I was like, "Damn, man, she's fucking hot, gorgeous." So yeah, it's our new hire. She's going to be a valet, which is another word for manager. I look at her. I'm like, wow. So I go up to her. I go, hey, how you doing? And she goes, I'm good. Nice to meet you. We all three are talking. Me, Buster, and her. And Buster didn't say anything. I was like, man, after she left, I was like, dude, I'm gonna ask her out. He goes, all right, go for it. So I did, not knowing that Buster had any kind of like feelings for her at all. Like he didn't say, oh man, I want to date her. I'm gonna marry her. Whatever, whatever. He never said anything. So after that night, I asked her out. I said, hey, what are you doing? I didn't really ask her out. I said, what are you doing after the show? She goes, no, honestly, I don't know. I was like, you want to go out, get something to eat? We were in San Francisco. There was a restaurant, like, where we were at, like, right around the corner. It was actually a nice restaurant, an Italian restaurant. And she goes, yeah, I would love that. I love Italian. And I said, yeah, okay. I said, so I'll meet you out front or out back. She goes, yeah, definitely. We go. We have a great night and everything. Oh, and have this beautiful dinner and whatnot. And we started dating. We were together for a few months. Well, for some reason, Buster and I just weren't talking. I thought, well, maybe because I had a girlfriend, maybe he's just trying to, out of respect, he wants me to enjoy my relationship. And I didn't think anything of it. Then I got a phone call from Tony, and he says, hey, Arking, I got a big question, man. WWE needs some talent this Tuesday. This was like on a Thursday. Need some talent for Tuesday. Back then, SmackDown was recorded on Tuesday, and they posted either Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. But they needed some people. They needed bodies. So he goes, Big Zeke's going to be there. All these people are going to be there. Me and Big Zeke were riding together at this time, by the way. Me and him were, me, Big Zeke, and, oh man, what was his name? I think his real name is Brian. Um, but he had a weird name, like he's from the UK. He called himself like the UK monster or the Loch Ness monster or the Ness monster or something because he was a big dude. He was like 6'6" or 6'5", something like that, and he was pretty well jacked up. But he rode with us a lot. He was a really nice guy. I didn't work with him much, so that's why I didn't talk about him. But he's kind of a funny dude, and he was just trying to make it in our world. But they sent a bunch of us out to WWE, and remember this guy comes out. I feel like his name was like Mark something. I think it was a guy named Mark Corono, and he pointed out all the guys that they were going to use, like 5 or 6 of them, and there was 2 or 3 of us that were still there. And he said, "You guys, if you guys want to wait, you can, but we're unfortunately not going to need you." And I said, "Okay, thank you." He goes, so they handed us an envelope. He goes, but if you want to stay, there might be a chance that we could use you for something else. Things happen. There's always changes. And I remember this guy was sitting in catering. He goes, yeah, why don't you just hang out with me? Just hang out. You never know. They might use us. And I was like, okay, cool. So he goes, yeah, sit down in catering. Help yourself to all the food you want. Drinks as well. And, you never know. You might get picked. Remember, I didn't want to eat because I just know my stomach. I didn't want to eat too much, so I think I had like a couple, yeah, some chicken and some other things. So I ate that, and then plus a couple drinks, and then this guy that was sitting there, his name is Paul Burchill, and he's sitting there, and he's like, "Hey man, you never know. They might, you might get picked." And me and this guy Paul had a conversation the whole night, and just talking and joking and relaxing and whatnot. Never did get picked. Never got put on WWE. Zeke did, and so did the Aaron Williams and a few other guys, but I didn't get picked. And I remember the other 2 guys that were there, they were gone. They didn't even stay the whole show. They left before the show even started. They figured they weren't going to get. And so me and Paul were sitting there talking, and Kane comes up. I had met Kane a few times. And here's the thing about Kane that I thought was really cool. He never introduced himself as Kane. He always introduced himself as Glenn Jacobs. Or Glenn. He always says, hey, my name's Glenn. Nice to meet you. And it was like really cool. He was always a guy. He was never a gimmick. And he sits down and he goes, hey, I know you. Where do I know you from? I said, oh, I work for PCWA, and you've been there a couple times. He goes, "Oh, that's where I know you." He goes, "How you doing?" And and I was like, "Good." And he goes, "I'm sorry, I'm bad at remembering names." I says, "Oh no, you're good. I'm sorry." And he goes, "Okay, Glenn. I don't know if you knew that." I was like, "Yes, sir." Shook hands and we were talking, and he goes, "You mind if I sit down with you guys? Just chat." And I was like, "Yeah, not at all. Please do." And we were talking, and then he gets called to do something, and then me and Paul, we were just talking along with Big Zeke, and I remember I cut this promo on Big Zeke, and walking by was this guy, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him, but I remember I seen him before, and I couldn't remember where I seen him before, and he's like looking at me, and he's just like this and just staring at me, cutting this promo on Big Zeke, joking, and he goes, "Kid, you got charisma." I said, "Oh, yes, sir." He goes, "My name's Bruce Pritchard, one of the guys that's head of talent, and whatnot. Can I get your information?" I'm like, "Yes, sir." He pulls out a notebook. He goes, "What's your name and what's your number? And how old are you?" And I told him I don't remember how old I was. I was in my early 20s, or like 22 at that point. He goes, "Oh wow, you're a baby." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Okay, I'm gonna give you a call, man. Well, maybe we can get you a tryout up here." "Oh, that'd be awesome." He goes, "Yeah, dude, you're freaking." I know actually the exact words. He goes, "Dude, you're fucking amazing. I would love to see you with a mic in your hand." He goes, "Did you hear this?" And I don't remember who was next to him. It was one of the guys. One of the where he goes, "Yeah, dude, he's good." And I was like, I really don't remember. And I was like, I kind of was like afterwards, I was like, "Dude, that was embarrassing. I was just joking." And all goes, "Dude, you fucking impressed Bruce Pritchard, man. That's awesome." He's all excited and like going on. And I was like, "What do I do?" Like, he goes, "Nothing. I'm gonna call you. I know he is." Never got a call. Never called me. Kind of broke my heart. Whatever. Now, remember the whole Cindy Buster. Now, Buster was there and he refused to talk to me. In fact, when he found out we weren't going to be on TV, he just left. And I was like, "Oh, all right, Buster, take care." And then he didn't say nothing. He just left. And I'm like, "What the hell?" I didn't say nothing. It didn't bother me until like the next couple weeks. And um, remember we were in the dressing room and I said something. I was like, "Dude, what the fuck is your problem, man? Like, you just like shutting me out." And he goes, "Dude, you took my girl. That was my girl, man. I'm the one that pointed her out." Like, "You didn't say nothing to her, man." He goes, "Well, I was gonna ease into it, man. I wanted to get to know her first." I was like, "How is she gonna get to know her unless you talk to her? You didn't talk to her. I did." And I said, "Whatever, man. Fuck you. Like, you gonna let this girl get between us?" And he goes, "Yeah, dude, because that's kind of fucked up." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." So me and him had kind of a falling out. I say kind of because, in my opinion, it shouldn't have been a falling out. He was being a bitch, and I hope he sees this. He was. He ended up finding a much better woman because she wasn't that good. Trust me. I had her. Wasn't that good. Sorry. Sorry, Cindy. Not really. I mean, some things she did was good, but not everything. I will say she was a freak. I will say that. But she wasn't that good at being a freak. Anyway, me and her ended up breaking up anyway. Not too long after that. Whatever. And I remember the words that Chris Jericho said. 2008, and I'm like thinking to myself, like, I did a lot of matches in 2008, and I was like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. 2009, I didn't do that many matches. Ironically, I went to LA and I wrestled this guy named Tom MacDonald, who is a rapper. One of my last matches was against him. One of my last like 10 matches was against him. So yeah, he probably doesn't even remember me, but it was a really good match. He was actually a really good wrestler. I thought he was going to be a superstar to be. And honestly, he kind of had like the Seth Rollins type vibe. He could have been like that guy, but he decided to become a rapper, which, hey, I think he's a better rapper than he is a wrestler, but that's just my opinion. Or a better wrestler than a rapper. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said that wrong. And I think he's a great rapper. He's one of my favorite rappers, but that's because I knew him personally and a little mark for him. Now, I remember I remember I was like thinking about it, and I told myself, I said, you know what, dude, like we're not even wrestling. It's time. It's time to move on. Time to walk away. And I remember I called Tony. I said, "Hey man, I need to have a talk with you." Tony goes, "Everything all right?" I was like, "Yeah, everything's great, man. I need to have a talk with you." He goes, "Well, I'm at my house in San Jose. You know, if you want to come through, here's the address. I'll give you the address." I said, "Yeah, I could be there today." Go to his house. Uh, remember, he had this really beautiful house, man. It was nice. And walk in, and he goes, "Would you like something to drink?" You know, I got Sprite. I was like, "Oh, I love Sprite. Yeah, I'll take a Sprite." And so we, you know, it goes gets it was like a ounce bottle of Sprite or something. Goes, "Let's sit down, man. Let's have a talk. What's on your mind, man?" Said, "Tony, I don't know if you noticed, but I have not been wrestling that much." And he goes, "Yeah, I was kind of actually wanting to ask you about that. What's going on?" I say something that somebody said about, you know, this business. You're better off not having a family, and you know, I think it's time. I think I want to actually start having a family. I said, okay, weird, but okay. And at this point, I remember it's hard not to get emotional about it. Um, I said, but you know, I want Buster to be my last match. So, you know, whatever we need to do to reconcile our differences, even if it's just that I broke in because of him, want to leave because of him in a good way. Oh, and so he goes, "What are you thinking?" I said, "I think we need to give him the title, and I want to try to challenge him. I want to lose. I'll lose again. I'll lose again. But last time, I'm gonna put my career on the line. I want to lose to him in a hardcore match. I'm willing to do anything and everything to win, and he's gonna pin me right in the middle of the ring. My goodbyes, and I'm done." This was I gotta sneeze again. Gosh darn. May 9th was the final match. Sorry about that. Allergies was just messing with me. It is a little bit windy out, so maybe that's why. But May 9th was my last match, and I remember I told him, I said that went into this. I'm like, look, man, I just wanna, you know, I want to lose. I said, you know, we'll have maybe you can have a talk with them. It's no, I'll tell you what. Show up this Saturday. We'll talk. I'll get you out there. We'll start the process. So Saturday we had an event that Saturday in Sacramento, and went to the Sacramento high school or whatever it was that we were at, and I remember not too much going into it. I just remember Big Zeke and I were talking. And I said, "Hey man, I'm just letting you know that after my contract stuff, I'm done. I'm retiring from wrestling." He goes, "No, man, come on, man. I know you don't wrestle that much, man, but come on." I was like, "No, dude, I want to start a family. I want to get married and have kids and whatnot." And he was like, "I get it, bro, but you could do that and still be on the road." I'm like, "You know, we're not going all across the world." "Yeah, but dude, I'm never going to be a WWE superstar. I had my opportunity. It didn't work." And I said, "You, of all people, take it because you're built." I'm like, "I'm too small." He's like, "All right, whatever, man. I get you. I get it." So I'm sitting there, and Tony calls me and Buster into his office, and he breaks down the whole storyline. He said that we're going to start tonight. This was like early in the year. I think this was like January. It might have been 2010. It might have been the end of 2009. It might have been like December of 2009. It was somewhere in that time frame. I just remember it was winter time and whatnot. And Buster's sitting there, and he's like looking, and he goes, "Well, so I'm going to end his career." He goes, "Yep, that's what Starking wants." The exact words were, "You started his career. Is he wants you to end it. He wants you to end it in a hardcore match." He looked over at me, and then he said, "Oh, okay." Then we leave the office, and he goes, "Why me? There's other wrestlers." And I said, "Because I literally have never had any better matches other than a couple that I had, but those wrestlers are not in this company. That you literally are the best wrestler for me. You and I have had some of the best matches I've ever had. Top 10, you're like 7 of the matches, if not more, of my top 10 matches." And he was like, "Okay." And he kind of like looked at me and he says, "It will be an honor. Seriously. No, this is not easy for you because I know this is a dream of yours." I said, "It's your dream." I said, I would love to be a professional wrestler, but I just don't see it happening, man. So I haven't made it anywhere other than here. You actually had opportunities. You actually were on WWE TV. I haven't." And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Cool, man. Thank you, for thinking and picking me." And at that point, we kind of reconciled our differences, at least for a while. Um, May 9th, we get into the event, and it's like everywhere you see like career for versus title, Red versus Buster, biggest biggest match ever, and for the title. And I remember when he hit his finisher, which his finisher was a double underhook DDT. Was his finisher, double underhook DDT, where he hit that on me, covered me in the ring. He hit it on top of a chair, by the way. Ever to me 1, 2, 3. I remember like laying in the ring, celebrating, and I let him celebrate, and the referee, grabs me. "All right, let's go." Uh, Remember, look at the crowd and try to cry. I was trying to cry. I started thinking like the most depressing things, like my grandpa passed away, and or like trying to cry, and like I got a little teary eyed, and I remember I got in the middle of the ring, got on my knees, they looked down and then looked up, and then got back up, and I blew like a kiss to the crowd and walked out. Get to the back, and like everybody's there. Everybody, Big Z, all these guys are giving me hugs and everything, and I'm all sweaty and bloody and everything, and they're all hugging me. And Tony throws a towel at me and then gives me a hug, and he goes, "Come see me after you're ready and everything." I said, "Yes, sir." Go to see Tony. Buster's there. Buster gives me a big hug and he says, "Hey, thank you. That was that was literally my favorite match ever. I appreciate it." I said, "Hey, man, thank you. That was definitely a top 10 moment for me." Tony said, "You sure you don't want to do this anymore?" And I said, "I'm positive, brother." And he hands me $1,000 cash and says, "This is a thank you present from me. Thank you." And then he hands me a check with I don't remember how much it was off the top of my head. And I remember I gave $500 to the Buster. I said, "Hey, man, you deserve this." He says, "No, I don't, man. No, keep it." And I was like, "Please, call it a gift from me." He took it, and then we hugged again. And then Tony said, "No, getting close to retiring myself. I'll be 60 years old at the end of this year." Because then been thinking about it a lot, because his dad had passed away that year. I failed to mention that his dad passed away. Like actually, it was before I even talked to him, so it might have been 2009. And he said, "I've been thinking about it. I travel. I got kids that I can spend time with, and what have you." He goes, "So I've been thinking about retirement myself. We've been doing really good. I've got plenty of money, the bank. I can easily retire right now if I wanted." I said, "Man, then do it, brother." But I can't, man. I love this. And then I leave. A couple years later, I got a phone call from Big Zeke. At the time, we were still talking. And he said, "Hey, about a year later, he goes, hey, man, Aaron died." "I mean, he died." He goes, "He was in a car accident. He didn't make it." Wow. I remember my heart sunk. It hit hard. I remember I was thinking to myself, I'm like, man, I'm so thankful that I'm alive, man, and whatnot. And then about a year later, I remember, I think Facebook was around. I'm pretty sure it was Facebook. Saw a post and it was PCWA, and it said, January 1st of 2013, doors will be shut forever for PCWA. We are officially going out of business. I was like, wow. And this was like late 2012. I remember I messaged the page and I said, what's the reason for going out? And he goes, hey, parking, retiring because I'm going to live the rest of my life in Florida and my grandkids and enjoy it. You know, my kids and grandkids, man, they're all in Florida. And, well, two were in Florida and one was in Texas. Wow. And he goes, we got plenty of money. I already bought property out there. I already own a house out there. I go out there and enjoy my retirement. And I was like, wow, so amazing. And, remember, this is actually really recent. I messaged Buster. It was when I was starting to bring back the podcast, and I was like, man, I would love to interview him. I messaged him. We're not friends on Facebook. Messaged him on Facebook, and I said, hey, man, he's Starking. I don't know if you remember, but I got this podcast, man. I would love to cover your story, man, because he would wrestle for a few more years. I think he just recently retired, like a couple of years ago, because he was never getting anywhere, and he's almost 40. He had his last match recently, not too long ago. I remember I messaged him and I was like, man, I would love to interview you, talk about your wrestling career. And he goes, dude, I don't want nothing to do with you, bro. Hey, my wrestling career is over. I don't want nothing to do with it. I'm done thinking about it. So, please don't ever message me again. Okay. Out of respect. He goes, don't ever talk to me. Don't ever mention me. Don't ever this and that. I'm like, okay. Won't mention you. I won't talk about you. I apologize. And that was it with that. That is my whole wrestling career. It wasn't long. Like I said, it was only a few years, like 6 years max. Count the backyard days, the days we get in trouble. But I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. But that was this episode. I mentioned about the giveaways. So at the end of every podcast, there's going to be a special phrase for a giveaway. And this week's giveaway phrase is going to be Jericho. Make sure you either type it in the Spotify chat that you can, or send me a message on my gaming page or personal page. I'll take the personal messages if you know me directly, or text messages even for that. But this was all courtesy to Go for a Beer. Thank you so much, Go for a Beer, for making me talk about this. Actually, it opened up a lot. It get a little emotional towards the end. I will say, I always say this. I have no regrets in my life, and I'll tell you why. I do not regret anything in my life, and there's one reason why I always say this: because your mistakes, your slip ups, your whatever is what makes you who you are. It doesn't define you, but it does help you become better. And I've always said that if you make a mistake, you learn from it. And there's only one thing I wish I would have done. It's not a regret. Is that I wish I would have tried to push myself to be top tier guy and push myself to other venues. I wish I would have tried to work out for WWE, TNA, or even some of these other companies, the Ring of Honors, and maybe even New Japan or even AAA. Try somewhere, but try to get my tapes out there and whatnot. But I really also wish I had some of the footage from all these matches. A friend of mine does. He says he's going to look through them. I'm hoping I get some of them. But he also said no promises because he might have thrown them away. He's going to start looking for them. But I'm not going to hold my breath. Not that I don't trust him. It's just he seems to think he threw them away. But that will conclude this podcast. Now, normally what I would do at the end is say, I'd ask a couple of questions. Who is Star King Gaming to you? And I'm not going to do that. So, but the second question is gratitude is a huge part of life for me. Every day I say 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I end my day with 3 things that I was grateful for the day or forever. So, what are three things that I'm grateful for? Number one, I am grateful for my family. And that includes a lot of you guys, my Facebook family, my gaming family. Doesn't have to be blood. The people that I consider family, my brothers like King Uno, the Gopher Beers, and all you guys. I consider all you guys such an amazing blessings in my life. Now, just because we're not blood doesn't mean we're not family. And I want to say that. I want to put a huge emphasis on that. There's some people who are not blood that I consider family. There's also a few other people that were really inspirational for me. Like they pushed me, they motivated me, they gave me the strength I needed, and I'm forever grateful. My moderators are included in that. People like Mandy, people like Alex Miller, people like, Black Ice X. There's a lot of people that are huge instrumental parts of my life, and I am forever grateful for that. So thank you. Second thing I'm grateful for is the fact that I have a platform to possibly help reach those. I know I've talked about this before. The gist of the podcast is I want it to be both relevant and relatable. This podcast, maybe not so much. Mental health is such a huge part of my life. The reason why I started redoing these podcasts was because of mental health. One of my best friends from high school, James Piniak, passed away due to suicide. Back in the day, he was my best friend, and I lost him. Wish he was here. I wish you got to see some of this, but I'm thankful that I have this platform to do what I do. Last thing I'm grateful for is all of you followers, whether you're family or not. You guys are all amazing. Now, it's not the only things I'm grateful for. There's a lot more I can say I'm grateful for, but my followers, I'm really appreciative of everything you guys do, the push, the support, everything. I love you guys. I cannot wait to see where we go from here. But that's going to end this portion of the podcast. Make sure that you put in the wonderful code phrase that I need to get you an extra entry into the giveaway that I already mentioned earlier. Thank you guys so much. It's your boy, Star King Gaming. I love you guys. Y'all take care.